Let's see if the stream kicks on.
Live. Live, man, live. We keep changing the game around, and we keep doing this in a very different way. So, wait, hang on. It just popped up on Firefox over here. Let's just see what happens.
Hopefully the chat pops up over the screen.
Yeah. Man. So it's a lot of commercials. Like we can't. It seems like we can't stop that.
No, the problem with YouTube is since it's so expensive now, they're trying to add more commercials that are longer for people to watch. Because
Wait, what's so expensive? You mean they just want to make more and more profit?
Well, not only that, but I mean, YouTube is probably one of the largest companies on the planet that loses the most amount of money. They spend so much money to they spend so much money to pay people to have their content on. They pay people. They pay so much money. Any person can upload at least 20 minutes, and if you verify your email, you can upload any content for as much time, and that all costs money for them to do. They just lose money. There's a person I watched recently.
Wait, hang on, I have a question, man. Are you playing Minecraft or something?
Yeah.
Oh, oh my God. I'm looking at Firefox and I'm going, wait, I think that's me in the corner, but there's some video game going on. And
yeah, man, giving the people something to watch.
oh my God, yeah, because I'm probably, it doesn't make sense just to stare at my face. Oh my God, that's great. All right, well, then we learn something new every day. Hey, so I watched some of these. This would be like those channels where someone just gets on and starts playing a video game, and they have 500,000 people watching them.
That's what I'm saying.
Hey, listen, man. So this whole thing could really revolve around you and your skills at playing video games.
Well, if that's the case, then we're screwed.
Well, I don't know. Just keep practicing, man. Keep working at it. And you'll get better, and we'll get more subscribers, and then I'll just yammer away in the background while people do what they came to the channel for, which would be to watch you play video games expertly and skillfully. So,
I need to become a god tier League of Legends player then.
Yeah. What game are you playing, actually?
This is Minecraft, but it's modded, so like they have regular Minecraft, or like they call it vanilla Minecraft, has been relatively the same for a while, but a bunch of people took the game and then they've added their own things. So for instance, in regular Minecraft, you don't have a map like this, but you'll see it in a second. But we can open up maps. I have a jetpack that's running right now. It's run on solar power, which isn't in Minecraft. There's a ton of different
wait, tell me again what is Minecraft? You build things?
So the Minecraft is a game in which you build anything because everything is made out of blocks, so it's really easy for you to connect things. And the actual point of the game is to defeat, or the original game was to defeat the Ender Dragon, or the End Dragon, or whatever they call it, which is just this big boss, and it was really difficult back in the day. But now they've added more monsters, and this version of it has a ton of different dimensions, so you can go to like dimensions where everything is different, like it has different blocks, and it's good.
So I had the idea that Minecraft was like video game where you built cities and things.
You can, but it's not necessarily the purpose, like but you definitely can.
That one's also called Minecraft, right? I mean, that's Minecraft too, but going back like 15 years, my nephew used to play that.
Oh yeah, it used to be a huge building game. Now people you can play online with other people, and you can play like PvP and stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do.
Okay, so here's the thing. So that's wild. It's so, video games are so fascinating, and like, why wouldn't they be, right? They have everything that we want, which is, a challenge, right? Doing something that feels like we're moving in some direction, right? So we're doing something creative. We can set the challenge wherever we want it. And we're just working with these controllers or whatever to do something online. It's no different than a dozens of other, or hundreds of other crafts, right? That you do, right? Like you make a tapestry, or you paint, or you do something, right? Huh. Or you write poetry, right? In a way, I mean, it's very you're doing something that, I mean, it's different, obviously, but it's not
Yeah.
in the way it pulls us in. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Huh. Have a since for whatever reason, when I was a kid, the very first game that I learned was when it first came out. It was Pong, and you would get this little box and hook it up to your television set, and we played Pong. And I mean, it was the absolute first game, I think, that really went out into the world. And I remember sitting on my living room floor when I was probably 11 or so, maybe younger, playing, moving these knobs and trying to just move that ball back and forth, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
incredible. Gaming has come a long way. I mean, um, even like now that PC gaming is becoming super big, like I'm playing on the computer right now,
Yeah.
and other games have also had mods. So like you would have the base game like Pong or whatever, but now you're able to completely change all of the rules and how it
Yeah.
works,
Yeah.
how it looks, everything.
Thing that you're doing is, it's like, most people who don't game, they have no idea how really complicated it is, and all the things you learn, and in a way, right, like in so many ways, like how good it is for the brains of for people, right, to really like build those challenges and solve problems and move quickly and think quickly, and I know it's really interesting.
I was gonna play
If we don't like,
Factorio, but I decided against it.
yeah, yeah, that's wild, man. Yeah, that's pretty wild. It's interesting. Is there like uh oh, and you put the chat on the screen,
Yes, sir.
right? Oh, damn. All right. Oh, all right. All right. So here, Evan, my thoughts on VR for education using younger kids. Listen, I think all of it is good, but I think all of it needs to, like, just mix it up, right? So virtual reality is, man, it is so intense. Um, like the places where human beings are able to go virtually, and are, an AI, like through all this artificial intelligence, we're just going to get better. So here, first, let me go back a couple steps, right? Here's my thinking. People who are promoting AI, they overstretched, right? They promised these things, or they didn't promise, but they made it sound like all this stuff was right around the corner with the first VR glasses and the second generation and third and fourth generation. And so we think, oh my God, it's a fourth generation, but it's essentially the same as the second generation, right? But we keep talking about all this new stuff that VR is going to bring to us. Um, but it hasn't. We're just not there yet. We're not there with the technology. Um, but we will be. The, a virtual reality is gonna really sweep into define or shape human life in the future. I don't know how far in the future. Maybe it's 10 years, maybe it's 20 years, but we human beings are going to be able to figure out how to live complex sociological lives online, where we don't need the physical presence of people around us. I don't need to go meet my friend at the coffee shop and have a coffee with my friend, right? Like I can do it virtually, and my friend is virtual, and we're gonna figure out how to do this in a way that it feels like I'm sitting face to face with my friend at the coffee shop. Like it doesn't feel that way. You can do it right now, but it doesn't really feel that way. But we're going to figure out how to do that. And we're going to get better at it. And we're going to live in these virtual spaces, man. And it's going to be it's, by the time we get there, it's not going to be that strange. And it would if we like leaped from like right now to 20 years into the future. It's going to feel really weird. But going step by step, we're going to figure out how to do that. And computers, man, with through AI and all, we're just going to go in leaps and bounds. So that's my take on virtual reality. And it allows us to have these experiences virtually without moving, without ever, wherever we are, well, some movement, but it's going to allow us to do things that we never imagined. And that's cool. So for a learning experience, we're gonna be giving people, we're gonna be able to create learning experiences unlike learning experiences that we have now. And it may be that those are like the death of all of us. It just drives us into the ground. It's just like, oh my God. Or it's equally likely that it's going to open up human consciousness and intellect in some really new and fascinating ways. So that's my take on it, on VR and kids and so on. So um, that's my larger take. I don't have VR glasses, and I don't use AI as much as, well, AI is using me, but I don't. I mean, because it's part of my life every day through. I mean, it comes into me. Uh, they're all just sorts of ways in which, I go to Google and I look for something and I get back this really fascinating mini essay about whatever it is I searched for. And I'm like, oh man, I didn't ask for that, but that's pretty cool. That's pretty useful. So anyway, that's my take. All right, so hang on. What do we got? Yeah, and Jason, yeah, video games can be it's a means of escape, lots of things. But people's like, oh, you're escaping, but look, we're all escaping. We go out, we say like, hey, I'm gonna go out for a Sunday drive for an hour and drive through the mountains. Well, that's an escape. What's what's the difference between doing that and staying home and playing a video game and escaping that way? So, right, it's all it's just part of life, man. And so, uh, yeah, I've never been a video game person, and mostly I think I don't know why. I think I haven't. It's always just been hard for me to sit down and figure out the rules. Like, how do you play a game? Like all the stuff that Jeff's doing right there. Um, I'm too slow. I don't react that quickly. So, uh, I think it's just fast. So I never got into gaming because you just have to get faster and faster. So, but I do look forward uh, to seeing all the wow, just the different ways in which AI and VR are gonna just shape human life. Yeah, I wish I knew that I would be around in 25 years. Like I wish I knew that, but I don't know that I will be. It'll be a stretch for me. I'd be like, damn, 25 years. I'd be in my late 80s. That's gonna be probably the odds aren't with me. So
We get to
but
a
it would,
million subscribers, I'll have Sam jump onto a Minecraft server with me.
yeah, yeah. Okay, I'll get. I'll
Or we'll
do
have you
that.
play Call of Duty for the first time.
Now, you know what? I played Call of Duty one time with my nephew back probably 12 years ago, and I was taken out within 15 seconds. It didn't last.
That's not that bad.
Yeah, yeah. I made it for 15 seconds. I think I was hiding or whatever you had to do to stay alive, so to speak. I mean, some of it seems rather violent to me, but the jury's out, 100% out that the violent video games don't, that there's no clear idea that it promotes any kind of violence. And every time somebody says yes and somebody else says no, and I don't know, the studies I've seen that are most thoughtful on this, like really people trying to get to the answer about whether violence and that we see in video games and TV and that sort of thing um, elevates the propensity to engage in violence among people who watch or participate in it. I don't know. It just don't see I don't. There's no clear connection. So that's kind of interesting, actually. I try to read those kinds of studies that with people who I feel like truly want the answer, or want an answer. But it's very contra, uh, goes against what I would imagine. I would have to think that somehow it would promote it. But I mean, that's my sociological mind does. But yeah, that's kind of interesting. Uh, yeah. Okay. Let me see what else someone's saying in the. Yeah. Mr. KDW1. Definitely, there are all sorts of games that allow you to pause, but even then, I have to just learn something, learn new rules, learn how to do something. I don't know, man. It just pushes me. I think I'm more just invested in just hopping around and reading stuff and thinking stuff, and so I don't know. Yeah, but one day though, I'd like to sort of take on the challenge of, spend a week or so really and take on the challenge of learning a game. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. So,
It's my childhood.
uh, yeah. Yeah, so Eric, yeah, so the idea promotes less violence, yeah. That violence in video games and stuff. Yeah, I mean I see that. I see that. You know, all I know is I've seen really thoughtful. There's so much research on it. I've seen so many thoughtful things on. Nobody comes out and says it absolutely promotes the violence. Like I not I, that I think is pretty much is debunked. It's whether it has. I think is my most recent thing, whether it has there's really no relationship, or it actually strangely reduces violence for some people in some ways, which is pretty wild, man. Yeah. Oh, dude. Mark. Hey, wait. Can we Je-
Yeah, I'm
Jeff?
sending over the Discord link.
Oh yeah, right. All
If
right.
you join the Discord, and then there's going to be, you might have to do some like welcoming yourself thing, but under office hours, the category, there is an office hours waiting room VC. Just jump in there and I'll bring you in.
Yeah, right. That's cool, man. Yeah, let's get a take on a take on the new pope. Yeah. Yeah, since it isn't me, I mean, you see you saw if you saw the
The thumbnail.
photo of it, the thumbnail, Jeff, but some of you might have been thinking it truly was me, but yeah, it's not, unfortunately. I didn't make the cut. Put my name in the hat, so to speak, but it's a big hat, so my name probably got lost in there somewhere. Anyway, yeah. It's pretty intense, man, to think that there's this American as a pope. Um, hmm. Man, so many things. My God. All right, hang on. So where are we at here? Uh, we're talking about video games. We're talking about we'll wait. We're gonna have a conversation about the Pope. So one thing that so I do have a connection to the Catholic Church, in that I I didn't grow up Catholic, so the Catholic Church has always been for me a little bit more mysterious. Like when you grow up in a certain religion, you can peek behind the curtain, so to speak, and yeah, it's the Social 19 Discord, and so anyway, um, so when you kind of go into a particular religious orientation as opposed to grow up with it, it's I don't know, for me it's easier to maintain a kind of a mystery, so to speak, and I think I had that with the Catholic Church. I got connected to the Catholic Church when I was in college, and anyway, when I started right when I started my master's degree, I knew I wanted to focus on Latin America. Well, I thought I did because I was learning Spanish, and I read this book about poverty in Northeast Brazil, and it was. It's very likely I'm going to get cut off, Jeff. So it seems like every time we have thunder and lightning here, I get cut off.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Wait, I'm there though, right? The
You
chat
are
got disconnected.
you are here now. You were off for like maybe 5 seconds. Not even.
I was off.
For just a couple seconds. Like, and you froze.
All right. Okay. Okay.
But you're back.
Okay. And that was a loud bit of thunder. Anyway, listen, man. So I found this book, and I was reading it about these priests in Northeast Brazil and the poverty in Northeast Brazil. So this was in the '60s, right? The book was written in the early '70s, um, and poverty was just unlike anything I just could have. It was the first time I was really introduced to reading very specific things about the world and about different levels of poverty in the world, and about these priests and the work that they were doing. And I was really fascinated by how committed they were to changing the world in really positive ways. So I I just kept exploring more and more and discovered liberation theology, and um, and was just a move. It was a movement in the Catholic Church that emerged in the 1960s to um, see the pull forward or bring forward the teachings of Christ uh, around um, alleviating suffering and feeding the poor and housing the poor and fairness and all just that love, right? Like really respecting people, greater equality and a lot of things that they didn't that people weren't seeing in the Catholic Church. And so because he's a search, it's a hierarchy. It's the Vatican and the power in the Vatican, and then the Vatican sends, through, the in the Western world anyway, right? The Church sends its people out and to conquer lands all through the Americas, and that they did, and they built huge structures, and they took gold, and they were part of stealing the gold and bringing the gold back to the church, and the church gets super rich and super powerful. And all of these priests were starting to say, wait a minute, that's really not going with the teachings of Christ. Like, that doesn't work. That's not what Jesus said. And so, what Jesus said was, help the poor. Blessed be the poor, man. Help the poor. Alleviate suffering. So, and they started calling themselves the ideas they were putting together as a theology of liberation, liberating poor and immiserated people from their lot in life, right? And that was the role of the church from their perspective, right? Well, that's how we got, you know, John Paul II, who became uh, the who was elected in what 1978 as Pope, was really didn't wasn't completely against that, but he thought it was pushing too far on the kind of teachings of socialism, right? And whereas these, yeah, how do you define poverty? I know that I know that poverty in this book in Northeast Brazil it was wretched. And so like in areas where these priests were working in South America and in parts of Africa, but mostly this came out of South America, was wretched poverty. Like, oh man. So the Pope John Paul II was a little bit suspect of this because he came out of Poland and he came out of his experience with the Soviet Union, and that was communism to him, and the Soviet Union was not was a hierarchical, power hungry system, based on military might and superiority, and just crushed the Poles. And when the Poles were trying to rise up to, against the Soviet system in the early 1980s, with perestroika and so on, the Russian, the system just tried to just crush them. So anyway, he wasn't all about any of that. And so he then started pushing up against this movement in the Catholic Church. And then wait, is hey, by the way, Jeff
He
is
is he is in here. I was just gonna let you finish what you were saying, and then I'll bring him in.
oh yeah, can he hear what I'm saying?
From the stream, not from Discord.
Make sure he's listening to me because I want to. Well, you can bring him in and just have his voice in here, and then we'll introduce him so he can hear what I'm saying.
Okay, he won't be able
And
to
then
turn on
I'll.
his video, but I'll go ahead and bring him in.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, Sam,
Okay.
how are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, Mark, we got you, man.
Thanks, bro, for bringing me on again, dude. I subscribed to you on YouTube, and I saw the thing. Just cleaning out my apartment, all done with exams and stuff. I was like, yo,
Oh, dude. All right. Hey, listen, I'm finishing the story of how I got introduced to the Catholic Church.
oh, really?
So it's good that you're here now. You can listen in, and then we'll talk about the new
I'm
pope.
a listening. I'm a listening.
All right, man. Yeah. So anyway, um, so so I discovered this new movement called liberation theology, and it's fascinating to me because these priests and nuns and lay cleric are just so dedicated to alleviating poverty and suffering, and there's so much of it. So I take my first trip to South America. I go to Ecuador in 1985, and wow, man, just what I saw was what I had been reading about, and I went to a lot of the countryside and a lot of really poor communities in Ecuador, and I was really moved. And then I met a couple priests. I kept, people in the church, and it's okay. So my curiosity, was piqued because I was now writing about liberation theology, and just thought it seemed like a really cool movement. Um, so then I decided, okay, I'm going to write my dissertation on this. And so then I traveled to Mexico and traveled to Central America, and then ultimately went back to Ecuador, where I lived for over a year and a half doing research on the Catholic Church, on what priests were doing in support of alleviating suffering on the part of people and building strong communities, so that people could solve their own problems, like address their own issues. If people work together in communities and they combat individualism, they really can work together to solve their own problems. And that's what it's about. Like, that's what the authentic communal Christian experience is or should be about. And that's the idea, right? So don't be wedges against one another. Work with your neighbor. You all can build better lives together, right? So that the church hierarchy was suspect of this, like I was saying, because it just sounds a little bit too much like socialism and so on. And a lot of the priests really saw themselves very much as socialists as well, right? Some of the priests were up, there was Camilo Torres, and who was fighting with the rebels in Colombia against he was a former priest, right? And so some people went off the deep end, but most didn't, and most were absolutely just trying to work in their communities to, instead of focusing on things that would make them comfortable, i.e., the priests, or just minister to people's spiritual lives. They really were working to improve their social lives and their economic lives and livelihoods. So I got so many stories of priests who I worked with and studied, and nuns and so on, and some really just fabulous people doing some really cool stuff. But in any case, the Pope had used this Cardinal Ratzinger to really come down, and he was like on the head of the organization inside the church and the doctrine of the faith, right? And he just really hammered liberation theology hard. These priests hard, man. They really, really were. Even people that were just doing some very, really good work, but they just spoke out against it so strongly and tried to undermine it. And he later became the Pope, right? When Pope John Paul II died, then Pope Benedict became the Pope. He's still alive. But then we have this new Pope from Argentina who comes in, and he's really progressive and like super progressive, right? And then he just died, and so now we have this American. So Mark, what do you know of this American guy? What have you heard? Because I've seen some stuff that seems like, he's kind of.
Yeah, so what I'll say, I mean, I can give a little background. Cardinal Prevost grew up in Chicago, went to school at Villanova. We found his yearbook picture, actually. A bunch of the Philly people were like, no way the Pope has said "Go Birds" before. So super funny. But he's done most of his work as a priest and a bishop in Peru. So it was very interesting to see when he came out and gave the Urbi et Orbi blessing. His address was he gave in Italian and Spanish. He did not use any English, even though he's an American. And even Pope Francis only gave his address in Italian and gave the blessing in Latin. He didn't use any Spanish. So it was very interesting to see that. Yet he broke out some of the regalia, some of the stole and the vestments that are traditionally worn during that blessing, but that Pope Francis did not wear when he gave the blessing. So it was a really interesting mix. I think it's very likely that he's a moderate compromise candidate. He's seen as the least American of the Americans because almost all of his work has been done in Peru. He seems to have the same heart kind of as Francis, especially when it comes to migrants and poor people, and still upholds a lot of the church's teachings on other topics, other hot topics, you could say. I think what you were saying about liberation theology is really interesting. I don't know, you probably know the story of Oscar Romero too, and how he was shot by the El Salvadorian government, and then I think 200,000 people went to his funeral, and he ended up being canonized in 2018 by Francis, right? So Francis definitely was a different perspective. And there are certain, every person I think about Francis tried to put him in their own view. If you were a very progressive liberal person, you would say, oh, the Pope Francis said this or this, and then there are a lot of quotes he said that more conservative people, more conservative Catholics would use and say, no, the Pope is still based, bro. And so what the interesting thing about Prevost, now Pope Leo the 14th, is that he's been very quiet on a lot of issues going on in the church. And so no one really knows where he stands on things. But I think that could be a really good thing. We live in this culture of, constantly seeing information on our phones, constantly wondering what people are thinking, going on X, on Twitter. And, religion and Catholicism and Christianity, I think people see it as a way to get away from that, right? And to return to something more peaceful, kind of away from the modern world, the hustle and bustle of our lives. And I think that's something that Pope Leo is going to kind of, bring back into the church. But he's young, so he's 69 years old.
Wait, how old is he? 6'9" or 5'9"?
6'9". But that's still fairly young, right?
Totally.
Most of these guys are well into their 70s, right? I mean, some of the top abile, you would say, were almost 80. So
here, let me kick something out to you. It's interesting. I'm looking at just these things in the New York Times, right? And it's his first words. I mean, he's talking about peace, right?
Right.
And
peace be with you. But that's a common greeting for a
no,
bishop.
no, I got that. But but he's really emphasizing, I don't know, and emphasizing community and so on. So it'll be interesting to see. Man. But I'm with you. There is I have a mixed. Okay, so with liberation theology, all right. So first off, when I first set foot in South America in 1985, man, when you're in poor communities, you just cannot imagine the levels of poverty and suffering that I saw for the first time. I can't even describe it. And so for me, so what these priests were saying is I met more and more, and nuns and so on, when they lived among such suffering, it became increasingly difficult for them to go in and say mass and tell people to strengthen their relationship with God through Christ and so on, right? They're just I can't do that without also doing some conscious, my consciousness won't let me, or conscience won't allow me to not jump in and try to alleviate that. And but sometimes but a lot, there were some of these priests who I'm just like, man, are you even a priest? One guy was a sociologist and he was a priest, and he would say mass like once or twice a year. That was it, man. And then
Really?
there were other people that would say mass every day, or I mean, they were also really would identify with liberation theology. They would still say mass every day, but this one guy, he was this basically a secular sociologist, and he'd just be like, all right, I'll say mass, well, once a year.
Yeah, they're supposed to say mass every day.
I
And they're
know,
supposed to
man. I
pray
know.
the liturgy of the hours every day. They take a vow to pray a certain number of
I
times.
know, dude. But listen, but at the same time, this is a guy who, because of his work, like he was working to help organize workers in these gold mines.
Right.
And I was at the gold mines with him, and like, whoa, man. You can't, you'd have to be there. You'd have to experience it. And he's just like, these people, they need to come together and they need to form a union, basically, because they were just being exploited to no end. Anyway, he got kidnapped by the military, and they took him in just for working with these workers. And they took him in and they tortured him, right? And he showed me the marks on his body where they tortured him. And at one point he had a blindfold on, and he said there was an American in the room, like advising them, like, and because the U.S. the Americans were down there working with the military government at
Yeah.
that time. And but he didn't really hold it against anyone. But the point being, like, a guy like that who is experienced the things that he's experienced and does the work that he does, he's just like, yeah, I'm not going to say mass every day. It's like, yeah, right, dude, you don't have to say mass every day.
Yeah,
You're
in a very extraordinary circumstance in that regard. And like, yeah, those places, I'm sure, like you say, you have to go and see it. But that's something like, yeah, the church has always been very supportive of like organized labor in that regard. I think I told you maybe a little bit, Sam, about like I don't know if I did, my family background. My last name is Kormos, which is Hungarian for black and dirty fingers. And that's because they were coal miners in Western Pennsylvania, right? And so we lived in Brownsville and stuff. I think I told you about that. So the mines were terrible. My great grandfather died when my grandmother was 12 years old. She didn't have a memory of her dad beyond 12. Like, he just died in a coal mining accident. And that was very common.
yeah.
And so, like, yeah, and I'm sure in these poorer countries it was way worse, right? And yeah, that's unfortunate, But wow, that's really, I didn't know you did that. Like, that was what your PhD was on. We looked you up after class, the last class, when you were like, I didn't want to go to that school for my PhD, and then we found it was Rutgers, and we're like, bro, Rutgers is like a Big Ten school. Like, that's a decent institution, man. Come on, like, it's in New Jersey, but other than that, like,
No, it's in Central Jersey too. Exit 9 on the turnpike, to be exact. But yeah. No, it's good. It got me. By the way, I'm right now. I have the beads, the rosary beads that you gave to me after class.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're
That's
nice,
cool,
man. They're nice and heavy. I really appreciate them.
Yeah, bro. It's like a weapon. Don't throw it at anybody.
You gotta get the blessing. Anyway, that was my work. And what was really fascinating about my PhD work is that, like, a lot of people were talking about liberation theology and writing about it, but they were all saying the same thing. But very few people went down and actually did the field work. So I was really, in a way, more of an anthropologist than a sociologist. But it for me, it was absolutely and utterly fascinating to be inside the church in that way, in the lives of people, right? Because I would go travel around through in the countryside, and sometimes, on horseback, sometimes walking, sometimes, whatever it was, to different communities with priests. And it was really a blessing for me to have the opportunity to see that side of the church and meet some really, really dedicated people, and also meet some people who were just kind of greedy and brainless and empty. There were a lot of priests and nuns like that I was not. I didn't find to be very attractive as human beings in any way. They were just pretty boring. But some people were utterly fascinating and really, really good people, and helped to form my moral code, my moral system, moral understanding of the world. So I owe that to them. And there are, by the way, Mikhail, oh man, I forget how you pronounce that, but Mikhail, there are a lot of African, the religions, or at least practices in the various coasts. In Ecuador, for example, and up on the northern coast of Esmeraldas was actually a slave port, and lots of interesting practices. And then my time in South, it's not Latin America, well, in Haiti, certainly. But yeah, very cool. Hey, so listen, so this guy was the new Pope, what's his name? Leo the 14th?
Leo the 14th. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So he's, man, imagine what that would be like to be chosen Pope. You
want to know? So Sam, after the white smoke comes out of the chimney of the Sistine Chapel, and they take him away and they usher him to a room, and it's called the Room of Tears, because it's said that every cardinal, cries in there before, they get him dressed in the white cassock, and they're like, what name are you going to take? And, as with the ballots, they read off their last name, right? So when they're in the Sistine Chapel, they hear their last name being called. They're thinking not only about their current name, but what name are they going to pick, right? And it's really interesting. I think he picked Leo because that's a more like traditional name too, right? Like the name of the Pope always says something about them, right? Benedict chose Benedict because of Benedict the 15th, who was Pope during World War I. And he was seen as a Pope that kind of helped bring peace after World War I. And Benedict the 16th wanted to bring peace as well. Francis picked that name for the poor, actually, because his name was being read off. He got a lot of votes in the 2005 conclave, and he was thinking about picking John when he started hearing his name. And I forget his name, but he was an archbishop in Brazil who was sitting next to him, and he said, "Remember the poor," while they were reading off his name. And he said at that point he was thinking, I have to pick a name of someone who served the poor, and no one better than Francis of Assisi, right, who gave up like everything.
Oh, that's wild.
And so that's why Pope Francis chose Francis. And so Leo, I have to go out and read about Leo the 13th, but he was beginning of the 1900s, beginning of the 20th century, had a fairly long pontificate, but I don't know nothing about that. Some of us were reading through his article when we were watching the news earlier, when he came out. The Wikipedia article for him has been like updating crazy nonstop.
Oh, I know, man.
Watching it in real time.
That's intense.
It's crazy. But
I'll check it out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Hey, have you ever been to the Vatican?
Dude, I haven't. It's really on my bucket list. Okay. I've been to Spain. That's the only place outside the U.S. I've been to. Spain and Portugal. Portugal. So
I did when I was back in 1982. And I studied in Spain, and then the first thing we did, during the break, was hop on a train and go over to Rome and go to the Vatican, and really impressive. And then Lori and I, about 5 years ago, we were coming home from Iraq, and we stopped through, and I set it up so we could spend the night there, and so we could just go down. Yeah, it's definitely go in an off time. Don't go in the summertime. Try to go in the middle of winter or something.
Right, because it's especially crazy right now because it's a jubilee year right now, which basically just means like every 25 years there's additional ceremonies and things that happen at the Vatican. So there's a lot of people there this summer right now, which is nice because there are people who were just planning to travel there, right, to see the Vatican, and then they were like, whoa. There might be a new pope while we're in Rome visiting.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
And the crowds were crazy. I mean, you could see it out in all these different countries, flags and everything. and then like nobody expected an American too, which I think
Yeah.
is really interesting. But like I said, a lot of the Cardinals don't really think of him as an American. Like
Yeah.
he grew up American, but he's more involved with the South American church, right?
Yeah,
And now
because
he's working in Italy.
yeah, especially a lot of these folks are, and it's like it's with the religious orders as well. I mean, people are really traveling around the world, going to different
Yeah.
places. So
And he's a member of the Augustinian religious order. He's the first
Oh, yeah?
Augustinian pope. So just like Francis
Yeah.
was the first Jesuit, right? But Augustinians, like they're known for education. They run Villanova University.
Yeah, totally, dude. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
That's
Wow,
going to be interesting to see too how that plays into his his papacy.
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, listen, man. Thanks for hopping on and
Dude, of course.
giving me the update. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, man. Good
All
summer.
right, listen.
Maybe
Yeah,
I'll
have a great summer. All right,
Yeah.
man. Take
All
care.
right. Bye, Sam.
All right, ciao. So that was Mark. Mark said was a student in class. He volunteered
And his dad
toward
did
the
too.
end of the semester. Yeah. His father came on. His father's the guy that came on and talked about military culture. So, yeah, that's cool. It's really, for me, so I have a lot of criticism. Look, I have so much criticism of if I just want to open up that window of the Catholic Church. It's not very difficult, especially when you go into South America and, you understand the history of the church and how the church got so powerful. It's like it wasn't, people weren't just putting ideas out there and saying like, hey, why don't you convert to Catholicism or Christianity, right? I mean, it was just imposed upon population and not and often in a very, very aggressive and violent way. And so, yeah, you got to read the history of that. It's not all, it's easy to feel pretty snarky and, yeah, and annoyed at all the pomp and circumstance, and all the regalia and so on. But at the same time, I think as Mark was saying, and what I say, there's a spiritual side that we have, and sometimes it gets lost in the power of these big buildings and these, the vestments and so on that people are wearing in these many different ritual ceremonies and so on, and we lose this that in the end we're trying to figure out the meaning of life and why we're here and how we got here, and if there's some kind of supreme being involved, which is hard to imagine that there isn't, and yet it's hard to imagine that there is, right? But we're trying to figure that out, and so in the end, that's kind of, religion is a way for groups of people to agree on certain practices and ways of thinking, frameworks for thinking, so that we can all work together collectively to approach the perennial questions in the best possible way, right? And by the way, what I just said right there was, I can't believe I just kept that thought going, and that it was clear as it was. So religion, right? Hang on, I want to try it again. So religions are like these organized rituals, like organized groups of people. They come together, we agree on certain basic ideas about how things operate, so like whether there's a God and where the God came from and what the God wants, this kind of stuff. That it's important that if I'm going to worship or participate in some kind of religious thing, that the people immediately around me have a shared agreement about some basic things. And then we decide on some rituals that we'll follow. Maybe it's praying or chanting or gathering a certain number of times a day or week or whatever it is, right? Maybe we'll drink various things and eat various things at certain times. And then if we're all participating in those rituals, then we strengthen the bonds that we have together, right? But in the end, we're trying to answer those perennial questions. Where did we come from, and what are we doing here, and where are we going after we die? Those are the three questions. And so there is all these religions and all this intrigue and all these that goes along with it, and where they get their names, and like what it signifies, and all this kind of stuff. In the end, it is an institution that one would imagine that's supposed to be dedicated to people who organize themselves in a Catholic way to answer the perennial questions. And sometimes people get lost in that. And I saw that in my work in South America. Some people, they got lost in the pageantry and the ritual. They just so many people were empty in that way. They lost touch with the spiritual journey that they were on, and that they were supposed to be shepherding other people to be on. They're congregants, but other priests and nuns, wow, were so such fascinating people, and really wrestling with really cool things and doing some really, really cool things. So it's a lot like professors and teachers. Some people are really not, they don't really get what it's all about. And other people are just really on a cool journey, like any profession, it doesn't really matter. Parents, right? It's so, video game players. Right? So anyway, that's that's cool. That's my experience of it all. So the Catholic Church. Yep.
I like that he said that this Pope didn't really speak out very much. Like, I'm assuming if he has a Twitter account, it's just like very professional. He isn't letting a lot of things, not that he's hiding anything, but like he's just more of a quiet guy, and he's not like trying to make certain groups of people happy or upset or anything. He's just doing his job.
Well, listen, some people will argue like that. Hey, it's this guy. What's he been doing? Right? Where's he stand? Where does he stand in terms of like violence and oppression and exploitation and these kinds of things, right? That one would imagine like things that Jesus would be concerned about if Jesus showed up tomorrow and looked around and been like, hey, wait, hang on a second, right? So one would imagine, so some people would be like, yeah, what's he doing about with that stuff? And other people would say, well, no, what's he doing to help to formulate advanced theology forward, and the kinds of spiritual questions forward that help people to have a better, stronger, more thoughtful or loving connection with God, right? And in the end, that's what the church becomes a mediator or to God for everybody. And I can see that, So it's all part of the I see it all. It's all part of the journey, man. So the church, and in the end, the church, in the Christian tradition, Protestantism sort of comes along, and Luther came along, and he wasn't the first person, but he's the one that, for whatever reason, really shifted things in a big way to tell people, hey, you don't need the church to get to God, right? If you want to have a relationship to God, you don't have to. It doesn't have to be mediated by the church as an institution. Just have it. Here's the Bible. Read the Bible. Do it on your own. Gather together and figure it out. And you don't have to pay a lot of money for all these rituals like baptisms and communions and catechism and this kind of stuff. Becoming a member of the church, you got to shell out the rusty bucks, so to speak, right? And I saw that in South America. I remember one priest, who was a really good guy, he was a priest from Spain, was living in this diocese where I was. There were several Spanish priests, but this guy was in a really poor community. With his whole area, there were probably 40 communities where he was. So it's really a parish, I should say. And people would, generally speaking, when you want to have a mass dedicated to your loved one, maybe someone who died, or maybe someone who's sick, or maybe your spouse or your child, or whatever. You pay the priest money to have the mass said in that person's name. So in these communities, people would give money. And so it might be a couple dollars. These are really poor communities, and might be $5 in the city, and in the city, which was Cuenca, where I was. It was a small town, small city, but it would be more like $10, the equivalent of 10 US dollars, right? This was back, a long time ago. And this priest, again, really good guy, the Spanish guy. I remember I was with him one time, and this woman showed up with a little bag of corn. I mean, a tiny little bag with corn seeds in it. That was it, man, that he could boil to make mote. And that's all she had. That's all she could give up. That was it. Like a little tiny bag of corn, maybe a half ounce, like an ounce. And that's it. And she wanted a mass to be said on behalf of somebody, I forget. And he, because of who he was, he's like, oh yeah. And there were other priests who would be like, I can't accept that. You got to come up with, if you want a mass, you pay me money. I mean, real jerks, man. People that I just thought were just immoral in a way. But then sometimes they would say, no, people have to give something up for God. But I'm like, well, that's what these televangelists say. You got to give them money to buy a new airplane. Anyway, but this guy, so thoughtfully and graciously accepted that, and then gave it back to her. Said, I don't. No, I know he didn't actually. He kept it. He said he had to keep it, or she wouldn't feel that she had done something. Anyway, so that's cool. Lots of cool examples like that. So hang on. David Hawthorne says, I've attended a lot of Christian churches. Most of them believe that their beliefs are the only ones that are right. Sam is wrong. I don't think I said that. Did I say that? That Christian churches. I don't think I said that. That I would say most, if there's like a kind of a liberalizing people who, whether are Muslim or Christian or whatever, a fairly significant size of people actually in every religion, according to Pew, have the idea that there are many ways to get to heaven. So hang on, I'm gonna look this up. Hang on. Let's go. That's 2008. So I don't know if that's going to be views on the afterlife. Hang on. Let me just look at this. This was 2008. So let me see. So my religion is the one true faith leading to eternal life. This is Americans in general, and 29% agreed with that. Many religions can lead to eternal life. 65% agreed with that. This is the Pew Research Organization. Now, this is in 2008, so it's a while ago. But I suspect that if anything, it's only gotten less. Those numbers have even shrunk. That people are more open to other religions getting into heaven. So hang on, let's look at this. Catholicism. All Catholics. Well, hold on. Can Catholicism lead to eternal life? Right. Okay. Oh, right. All people. 73% said yes. Protestantism, Islam. Half of all Americans said yes. Islam can lead to eternal life. Judaism, 69% said yes. Huh. Oh, wait. Jeff, you're putting, look at that. You got that up there, man. All right, that's cool. Atheists. Atheists can lead you to 42%. Anyway, so that's kind of interesting. Here's this, what determines eternal life, they asked Americans, okay? Even 52% think that 52% of American Christians thought that that some non-Christian faiths can lead to eternal life. That's a lot, man. Anyway, what determines eternal life? 30% say it's one's belief. 29% say it's primarily one's actions. Combination of beliefs and actions is 10%. So that's kind of wild. I think I would, Anyway, all right. So that's Pew. That's 2008. So that tells us that, yeah. Okay, wait. Oh, here's 2000 okay, here we go. This is 2000. This is 2021. 6% of Christians believe other faiths can also lead to heaven. Okay. Yeah, 73% of the U.S. adults believe in heaven. 62% believe in hell. Wow, that's wild. Yeah. Percent of U.S. adults who say they believe in. Yeah. Okay, there we are. Wow, that's wild. How afterlife will be. Most Catholics, but not most Protestants, say non-Christian religions can lead to eternal life. Yeah, there's that headline. All right. So anyway, that's really really interesting. Okay, David, hang on. Yeah, the doctrine of churches says different things. Although recently the Catholic Church has had to, kind of shift some things, right? Like when the Pope, I don't know, this was in the I remember in the 1980s when the Pope John Paul II said that, to people, that people who are gay and lesbian can go to heaven, right? And that was the first time a Pope said that, right? And you kind of almost have to say that in a way, right? If so many of the people in your who are leading your congregations are gay, right? It kind of makes it a bit problematic. Although I knew gay priests and gay nuns, and it just was irrelevant to them anyway, what the Pope said. And a lot of these folks who I spent time with, they were so dedicated to the people with whom they were working that it didn't matter what was going on in the Vatican. It was so far away. And some of them, a couple of them people who I know, several of them had actually worked in the Vatican at some point, but they transferred out of there. But in any case, it just didn't matter. It was so far away and it was just irrelevant, man. Yeah. Jason Perkins. I love that. The only person getting it wrong about the path to the top of the mountain is the person running around the bottom saying you're going the wrong way. That's great. Yeah. Well, okay. Religious and spiritual beliefs. This is kind of wild. This is 2025. This is Pew again. Most U.S. adults believe in God or a universal spirit. So percent of U.S. adults who say that they believe humans have a soul or a spirit, 86%. Believe in God or a universal spirit, 83%. Have thought about God and religion, at least some, 81%. How's that possible that only 81% of the people have thought about God and religion? Like, what are you thinking about if you're not thinking about that? Believe there is something spiritual beyond the natural world, 79%. Okay, so that's 3 out of 4. Believe in heaven, 67%. Believe in hell, 55%. Wow, so almost half. I mean, a little over half of people believe in hell. That takes a lot to believe in hell, man. I don't know what people think about that, but hell, that's like the image of hell that's presented by, people in the Abrahamic tradition anyway, but it's pretty nasty. Man. It takes a lot to believe in that. I don't know if anybody ever, well, I guess people probably believe it's different things, right? So it's not necessarily the hell that is that we see or that we kind of read about or think about. Like hell could be so many things, right? Hell could be, well, what Buddhists would say, I mean, you might say like the hell is being reincarnated back into this life, right? Like the goal would be to leave the need to come back to this life from certain spiritual traditions, right? So you come here, you're in this world, but then you go back to a very special, very unique void. Our spirits do, right? If that's the belief, the spirits go back to God, which is God. They go back to God. And which is, if you go back to God, you never want to come back into this world and have all the struggles that we have trying to fit our souls into these bodies. And then we fit them in the bodies, and then like we're struggling with how to make sense of these personalities that go along with our spirits. And that's of course what the ego is all about, right? What we call the ego. And we're trying to make some sense of who ourselves are in comparison to all these other egos or selves around us, right? That's the struggles of being a being, whatever human being, but also animals have a similar struggle. So I guess that's kind of, Jeff, you can take that off the screen now, by the way. Just make me live. I don't know if you can do that. Oh, maybe I can do it. No. All right. All right, there you are. All right. I just realized that was up there. Huh. Okay, so what do we go with? So we have all these humans that we're struggling. Anyway, I know it was believing in hell. So maybe hell is just being in this world, not the other world. Hell is you go to a place in the next world where you're gonna have to come back to this one, as opposed to just living forever. The Buddhists have an idea. It's like you want to reach a certain level in this life so you never have to be reincarnated. In Hindus, right? I mean, the reincarnation perspective. So that's what it's all about, man. Let's break free. Yeah. So religiously unaffiliated people who have no interest, who are not connected to any religions whatsoever, still 57% of those Americans believe there's something else beyond what we can see. Huh. That's really interesting. All right. Well, there you go, man. But belief in heaven is pretty stable. The ego is the working day self. That's the resolution of the conflict between the drives of the id conscience and the superego. Definitely, man. Definitely. And basically it's like what I think, Eric, what you mean by that is that so we're in these bodies and we're connected to the whatever we're connected to something that's larger than these bodies, and that's the energy. That's where our energy, our spirits come from. There's something there that's really special, and we got to work out how we manage the energy that is our spirits and ourselves with the goal to be special, to stand out, to only see ourselves as being part of these bodies. That's like the id thing, that's the part of us this is how I understand it anyway. It's like I'm me, Sam. Just that's all I am is me, Sam, in this body. What I look like, what I have in my wallet, the contacts I have on my phone, everything. It's just me. That's all there is. But then there's this larger thing that connects me to all other life around me, including other people. And so I'm constantly having to work that out to work out who I am in relation to all these other things. Yeah. Do I think the new pope will change the church in a significant way? If I had to guess, I would say, given the last pope was he started pushing on some things pretty hard, and then he backed off in the past few years, right? So pretty early on, man, he was really pushing on addressing inequality and freedom and poverty and these things of this life, of the flesh, so to speak, right? And then it seemed like he just kind of backed off a little bit. I don't know what happened, but it wasn't as strong. And if I had to guess, I would say there's a movement in the church to say, look, don't go as close to the edge as he went. Like we need to be back in the center, and we need to protect protect the institution. And it's a real more of a traditional conservative movement that it probably is a little bit stronger right now. And with that in mind, I feel like he won't change the church in any significant way. If that's the case, yeah, that's my guess. And doesn't matter that he was in Peru. It doesn't matter that, because you can be in Peru, and I'm telling the stories of certain people for who I experienced were really, really, they would have profoundly transformed the church if they were in power. But not everybody was like that. You don't have to. You can be in Peru and experience all sorts of things, but not take that perspective that we have to really transform the church to help people in their material needs, because that's what this is really about. So yeah, my guess is he's not going to. But who knows, man? People surprise people. Everybody surprises folks. I mean, that's the nature of it. So who knows? Yeah, he might just step into something. Yeah, be really interesting though. But clearly, I can't even. Well, wow, to be a fly on the wall, to listen to all like the plotting and the conversations and the stuff that it's not there's a lot. People are praying about things like who's going to be the best pope, and God, please guide us, that kind of stuff. Some of these cardinals, right? But they're also, these are highly educated people. They're all very politicized. Hang on. They're not all very politicized, but they're all quite aware of political issues. Some of them are all about political intrigue, and some of them, that's their job, to keep the bureaucracy functioning. And it's a huge job to do that. And these folks are really, they're strategizing and they're scheming and they're working behind the scenes in all sorts of ways. And other people are not. Other people are just kind of out in the open. But some people are, man, they see this. This is a really serious thing. Yeah. So I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in some of that, to hear what people were saying and what they know, because you just know people, right? It's like the military. When I talk to people who are higher up in the military here in this country, and I hear how they know so-and-so and this person and that person and all the connections all around, and so-and-so was stationed in that base and he was over here and they were over there. And people know, they know what people have done at high levels. There aren't that many people. So you know what they've done, and you know what they think, and you know how they are and who they are, and you know who they're connected to, right? That's kind of like the church. It's a huge institution like that. So pretty fascinating. But again, I didn't grow up Catholic, so I don't have the my wife remembers being in kindergarten and first grade and having the head priest of the school walking in with all these these black robes and vestments and very stern and didn't smile and came in with the report cards and called out the name of each student, and they had to go and they had to do a little curtsy or something in front of them and get the report card. And she was so scared. She said, I was so scared of this guy. God, he was so mean, and some of the nuns just seemed so mean. I mean, maybe he wasn't mean, but he seemed it because he never smiled, or she didn't remember him smiling. And some of these nuns seemed so mean also, her teachers, you know. It's like, oh God, how dreadful. So for her, that's part of her experience, you know. It's like, it's traumatic for a little kid when you encounter that. This is back in the late 1960s, right? So this is, you know, the church was not, there wasn't that kind of openness in the way that there might be today, right? People were really stern. Like, well, the principal of the, I had 2 principals in school, 3 of them, they were all really stern, and that was a public, those were public schools, man. So anyway, I didn't have that. That's not my experience of the church. So I and none of that mattered to me. It was just I don't have it. There's nothing that was working against me in some way. I was just utterly fascinated by the sociological character, or the sociological factors and forces that were at play in my experience with the church. So, you know, I can judge it, but I don't need to right now. But I could tell you stories that you would be judging it if I tell you the stories. But I was also, it's like one of these things. It's like anything, right? It's a big place. A lot of people. Some people are jerks and other people are not. And that's kind of how it works, right? That's how life is. So, yeah. Hey, I had this. Jeff, can you put this back up, or this? Can you put this back on the screen? Yeah. Hey, so I found that this came into my inbox today from this visual capitalist that I subscribe to. It's definitely worth subscribing to. Wait, is it up? Oh yeah, okay, there it is. Oh, you might have to make it larger, bro. You're gonna have to. You're probably getting at the key point of your video game, but you're gonna have to make it the right size. I don't know if you'll still be able to play the game.
No, you're good.
All right. All right. Anyway, listen. So this is post-pandemic GDP recovery, right? And I don't know. I'm not sure if you'll see my cursor moving here, but so if you go in the upper left, the line at the bottom, there's a dotted line that goes up along here. And oh yeah, you can see it. Okay, this dotted line, that was the predicted GDP. If we go back to 2019, that's where that was the predicted GDP of the United States. But here's what actually happened. It went down and it went up. And so this solid white line, it's actually 4 points higher than what it was predicted to be. So our growth was predicted to be 10.6 in between 2019 and 2025, and it turns out it was hang on a second, it was 14.6. So that's pretty intense. So here's the euro area. So there's growth was down. It was predicted to be 2.8 percentage points higher than it actually was. In China, it was predicted to be 7.4 percentage points higher than what it was. And then emerging markets and developing economies, it was predicted to be 8 percentage points higher than it actually was. Okay? So ours, of all these reasons in the US, I mean, there are probably some countries like this too, but ours was 4 points higher. Like, we've really done quite well. So this is between 2019 and 2025. So go back to 2019. They're predicting what the GDP is going to be, and then we get to 2025 for 2025. Okay, and then we get to 2025, and we see what it actually is. And so, you know, we think that our economy is in such terrible shape and it's really bad here. Well, our GDP is higher than what we thought it was going to be. So I don't know, keep that in mind as we, you think about how things are moving. So I don't know. It's just a thing. I don't know what to say. All right, you can pop that off the screen. Uh, I guess for me, when I see things like that, I'm always struck by, uh, um, I don't know, just what there seem. I read this thing the other day about how the mind is drawn to being more negative. Um, that it's a survival technique for us, right? So if you go, if we're going back thousands of years, you want to be cautious and you want to be kind of uncertain and you want to, in a way, be negative, right? Because you're always going to be looking for the problems because that's going to keep you alive, right? When you're everything is fine and you're whistling along the path to go wherever you're going to go out into the forest and you're not paying attention, that's the moment in which, the animal comes out and something comes out and attacks you or whatever, right? So you want to think that you're going to be attacked at any moment. So you're constantly sort of watching, maybe not frantically, but you want to be aware. Anyway, so so I was reading this thing about negativity is just sort of baked into the human psyche, right? And we have to really work hard to unlink it. And when we don't need to, right? Especially in the world in which we live, we don't always need to do that. Well, I think about this a lot of times it's just easy to assume that things are really bad. But wait, hang on, they weren't as bad as they could have been, right? Uh, and so, wait, David, I push your buttons somehow. I love that, right? All right, hang on. That's good, though. I'm glad I push your buttons. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, by the way, but the institution is rich, but people in low-level priests and nuns live simple lives. And yeah, I'm 100% agree with you on that. Yeah, I 100% agree. But it's hard for people to see them outside of the larger. Sometimes it can be difficult to see them outside the larger institution. I lived among people, priests and nuns and lay clerics who were just living their lives. They were doing their thing. So what happened in the Vatican and what happened in these, in the main church bureaucracy in the capital, in this case it was Ecuador, but in Quito, that didn't impact these folks. They were living their lives, man. The vast majority of people inside the church are living rather just ordinary everyday lives, doing their jobs, whatever their jobs would be, right? Yeah, that's my experience. But it's hard for people to see that sometimes because what we see the church, we don't see those people. We open up the New York Times, and then we see the vestments and the St. Peter's Basilica and all the money and the power that is there. That's what we see. So it's hard to say like, well, hang on, this is just a small part of it. The church is actually, it's this Catholic existence around the world with ordinary people living ordinary lives. Yeah, I would say that. Yeah. So I think that's pretty cool. Yeah. No, just like, and it's just like, in the military, or just like universities, we have these, God, they're, we're under attack in so many ways. And, universities there's so many people, man. It's like they're small cities. You have people doing all sorts of things, right? We should cut funding to universities. Well, who you think you're going to fund? Or who are you going to cut funding from? You're going to cut from some administrators and some professors, but also people who trim the trees and, people who take care of the buildings and people who are doing all sorts of average, ordinary things. The universities are very complex places. So, it's not whatever people think is the university. It's one thing, but it's much more than that. So that's when I hear that, you know, uh, the Catholic Church, I'm like, well, who are you talking about? Exactly. Like who? What do you mean? Do you mean all the congregants, who are you talking about when you say that? So, yeah. So anyway, I have the same thing about universities. So, and yeah, um, you know. All right, listen. We said we were going to stream till 4:30. And I don't know, we're here unless there's something else for me to talk about. Jeff, how's your game going? Like, what are you doing? Can you walk us through something?
Sure.
You went down a portal.
Well, first I was trying to figure out how the heck to make a portal gun. So like in Rick and Morty, this game has a portal gun. So now I can just anywhere I go, always have a way to get home really quickly. And then I just made a portal to a dimension called the Twilight Forest, which has different types of materials. And I'm going to rebuild my house because, hold on, let me show you.
Oh my God. Yeah, take me to your house that you made. Yeah. Or take us there.
My house is very boring. It's just literally a giant rectangle with stairs as a roof.
All right, okay. Well, all right, but once you get inside, it's pretty popping.
Yeah, it's okay. And then this is like you'll see all of this in a couple of seconds, but then this is a mob spawner and killer thing. It gives us a ton of XP. Michael made this greenhouse out of glass, and it looks really cool. And then his house is massive and has everything. So I want to get materials from that other forest and just completely change my house up.
It had such a trip.
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, listen, man. There are all sorts of ways to. That's what. Okay, so this is Minecraft.
Yeah, this is modded, so there's more to here than there is in.
So you could just keep building stuff in perpetuity.
Yep, we could build a whole city if we wanted to.
So as long as they keep updating the software, you can just build. You could go on for decades. Got ya. Okay.
This is the most popular game in the history of all of gaming.
Yeah. Yeah. Dang, man. Yeah.
Most sold, most played. It's crazy.
All right. Well, there it is. Do people get on people's websites just to watch them play Minecraft?
Most of the time, if it's a Minecraft streamer, yes. Or it could be like when you had your conversation with Steven like 3 years ago, he was playing Minecraft, but he's just a video game streamer, so like his audience will come no matter, like ours, like the people who come today, they don't really care what's on the background.
Yeah, but other people would. If we were doing this every day, streaming like this, you playing Minecraft, me talking, people would start coming onto the stream just to watch you.
If I was really good.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, you got to get really good. Yeah, well, people don't realize some of these streamers, man, they're streaming like this, and that's all they're doing. They're not talking. They're doing nothing, and they're tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people watching them, and you think, oh my God.
So yeah. Twitch right now, browse, which we're live on Twitch. So if you're on Twitch, live channels, highest viewed channel at the moment, high to low, is Asmongold, of course, and he's going over the news, and then Hassan Piker going over the news. Dota 2 and Fortnite are the two biggest games at the moment, at least in like people are watching them.
Yeah, it's wild, man. I mean, if you know there are certain games, if you know what's going on, then you can okay, let me watch, right? Because you have some idea. But for me, it's just movement on a screen. I don't get it.
The number one game on Twitch right now is Grand Theft Auto 5.
And that's explain what Twitch is? A platform like this one, but where people originally it was just people gaming. Yeah.
Twitch was the first like place that people started streaming. So YouTube people stream it now, but Twitch was the original. And the first version was called Justin.tv. It was actually just a guy, Justin, who streamed his life for a while, and then he gave people the opportunity to also stream, and then Amazon eventually purchased what became Twitch. And so if twitch.tv slash SOC119, if you have an Amazon Prime account, you can actually go over there, connect your Prime with Twitch, and then there's a monthly free subscription that you can do.
Damn. All right, man. All right, listen, I got to respond to Ahmad, and then I'm gonna hop off. I'm gonna have to take a phone call. I am following what's going on between India and Pakistan. I have said for many years, people have asked me, where do I think, what's the most dangerous area in the world? What do I think? And I've always said it's India and Pakistan. That I feel like if ever the missiles, nuclear missiles are just going to go between two countries, it's going to be India and Pakistan. I don't have any basis of, well, I do. I have lots of reasons why I think that. I can't, if I start putting them into words, though, it's just going to sound like I'm more of a knucklehead than I am, I suppose. But I just have had the idea that's probably the most vulnerable and dangerous area in the world. Yeah, it could just, they could, the Indians and the Pakistanis could cross over some lines from which they won't be able to return. And so it has always scared me. So when I look at this conflict right now, it's unsettling to me. I'm like, oh man, come on, y'all. Like, just relax, chill out. Kashmir's not that important. I know you think it is, but come on, man. Anyway, that's my take on it. So yeah, I've always been just special concern for that region. So, or that conflict. All right. So listen. I'm gonna go. I do have to go. We'll hopefully hop back on next Tuesday. Maybe before, but probably not. I don't know. We'll have to see, but definitely Tuesday. I leave next Friday for Korea, so we'll try to definitely try to do a couple streams while I'm in Korea. But it's a really packed trip. But in any case, let's see what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, buddy.
So Ahmad, you lived in Kashmir, but now moved for my studies to Germany. Yeah. No, I think, it's unsettling, man. I don't like it. Y'all just relax. But, I'm trying not to lose my mind paying too much attention because it's just really, yeah, and it just unsettles me. Yeah, right. There's the non-escalation agreements, but everybody has a non-escalation agreement. Yeah, agreements exist to be broken. So that's the nature of them. Else they wouldn't be called agreements. Yeah, we'd have no need for one. It just would be a thing, which you might imagine would be the case with nuclear bombs. It's like, wait, you mean there's a possibility we could push a button or several buttons and turn a key and this, that, and the other thing, and we would send nuclear weapons to another place and blow people up in fireballs, like in a huge. Nah, that's not even possible. Now, come on, that's not even possible. The fact is, it is possible. So then we got to have these kinds of agreements and things, which seems like, whew, man, yeah.
A problem.
And I hope we de-escalate it. I'm assuming I live with the idea that probably that we can de-escalate anything, and that mostly things are never going to be as bad as we predict that they might be. That's how I live my life now. So that's it. So I don't go toward the dark side, so to speak, and the negativity all the time. But at some point we do go down that side. We've shown that we can go there, and so I would never have predicted the carpet bombing of Vietnam and Cambodia, right? At the ways in where I watched some of the videos of that, it's just a horror. Who who would think that was a good idea? But we did. People did. So. Okay, dad joke.
I'm not sure if the bot is working right now.
Never retire. Yeah, thanks, David. I don't know. I'll keep doing this at least till I'm in the grave, I guess. Yeah.
The chat bot was off. That's why I was having a problem earlier.
All right. Do we have our dad joke?
Yeah. Let's see if it comes through.
I had a really good dad joke, but
it may not come on. Oh, there it goes.
Scientists have managed to make 2 helium atoms laugh. Oh my god. That's actually pretty clever right there. That's pretty clever. All right. All right. I gotta give it to that one. Yeah, that's really. All right.
Where do surfers go for an education? Boarding school.
Oh god. Okay, this is gonna get bad here. All right, I'm gonna have to get out. All right, listen, y'all. We'll see you. We'll pop back on next week. All right.
See everybody.